Powered by the Montana Television Network. This is the 10 o'clock news on Q2, Montana's news leader.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Jeanelle Slade.
And I'm Russ Riesinger. Changes made to Montana's Medicaid expansion program last year could be in serious jeopardy.
Similar reforms adopted by the state of Arkansas were rejected last week by a 3-judge panel in Washington, D.C. It's a decision that doesn't bode well for Montana's new rules.
In 2019, Montana lawmakers approved new rules for able-bodied Montanans who get their health coverage through Medicaid expansion.
But as Q2's Jay Cohn reports, it appears those requirements could be shot down before they even take effect.
We're talking about Montana's new community engagement rules that require some Medicaid recipients to put in 80 hours a month of engagement for such things as looking for a job, volunteerism, or going to school. Those new rules were slated to take effect January 1st, but state officials are still awaiting word on whether those requirements will be allowed by the feds. But Billings state lawmaker Bill Mercer, a past Montana U.S. attorney, believes the odds are against it.
These Montana community engagement work requirements haven't gone into effect because they haven't been approved. Now that the court has set aside what was approved for Arkansas, the Secretary is going to have to go back and decide, well, can I make findings to approve the Arkansas waiver? And I think our waiver request will be in that same bunch.
Montana Health Department spokesman Chuck Council tells us that last week's decision by the 3-judge panel in the D.C. Circuit applies to federal actions rather than state actions. Quote, we'll have to wait and see what the decision means for federal approval of Montana's waiver. It would be premature, he says, to speculate what federal regulators will do next. Mercer, though, believes the ruling will directly impact Montana, and a possible appeal to the U.S. Supreme Court is unlikely.
This is one of those 3-judge panels where you look at where the people come from philosophically. It's a pretty balanced panel. The guy who wrote the opinion's a Reagan appointee and known to be a fairly conservative jurist. The other two are Obama appointees, not known to be conservative jurists. And so I think this doesn't look like a great case to go to the U.S. Supreme Court to me.
So it appears likely that Montana lawmakers could be in line for a do-over when it comes to devising possible requirements for Medicaid expansion. Definitely something to watch once the 2021 legislature convenes. In Billings, Jay Cohn reporting for MTN News.
All right, thank you, Jay.
Well, some people question why the 3-judge panel in Washington, D.C. has jurisdiction over Montana's Medicaid expansion rules.
And the lawsuit was filed there because that's where the U.S. Department of Health is located.
Well, if you are excited about sports betting in Montana, you could potentially start making those bets as soon as mid-March. The Montana Lottery Commission voted today to approve the kinds of bets people can make and which sports they can bet on. Well, those include basketball, baseball, hockey, football, soccer, tennis, boxing, MMA, golf, motorsports, and the Olympics. And approved bets are money line, over/under, in-game betting, parlay, spread, prop bets, and future bets. The lottery expects to begin to place sports bet Montana terminals the week of March 9th. Once the terminal is placed and training is complete, you can start betting.
Our plan was always we didn't want to leave any equipment dark, so we weren't going to try to place locations all across this giant state and then leave them there and then turn them on one day. When we're done installing and training, you're selling.
The Montana Lottery will soon roll out its new Sports Bet Montana website. It will show players how they can sign up for the Sports Bet Montana app, and it will have tutorials explaining how each bet works.
U.S. Senator Jon Tester held a summit in Helena today to start getting ideas on how to address what he calls one of the biggest crises facing not only Montana, but the nation. That's affordable housing. MTN's chief political reporter Mike Dennison has more.
Everyone knows that healthcare costs in America are difficult to afford. But now, Tester says that housing for the average person is approaching the same level.
This isn't unique to Montana. It's across the country. We've got an affordability housing crisis going on right now. I think it already has had detrimental effects upon the economy, on the ability for businesses to grow, on the ability of businesses to relocate to places like Montana.
To evaluate the depth of the problem, Tester assembled more than 20 experts in Helena Thursday on everything from data to banking to home building. They provided some sobering statistics. For example, according to the Montana Budget and Policy Center, 3/4 of Montanans living below the federal poverty line pay more than 30% of their income on rent and utilities. And the average cost of a 2-bedroom rental in Montana is $300 more per month than they can afford. The head of a Missoula Housing Education and Building Group also says affording a home is now even a problem for people with good-paying jobs.
We've seen a trend over time where people that are earning higher incomes are taking our class because they are trying to find an avenue to homeownership.
And a Helena loan officer said house payments are becoming more than many can afford.
We went through the Great Recession and we had the housing bubble burst and a lot of mortgage programs went away. We're seeing those make a comeback. But there's a very big difference between me telling you I can approve you for something and actually having it be affordable in that household.
Tester says the summit gives him ideas he can take back to Washington, but that it won't be an easy problem to solve.
There's no silver bullet here. There's not one single thing we're going to do that's going to fix this problem. I think there's many pieces of this puzzle, and so we need to look at what pieces the federal component can contribute.
Reporting from Helena, Mike Dennison, MTN News.
Senator Tester says he wants to increase the availability of affordable housing across all of Montana.
A Missoula County push to restart passenger rail service across southern Montana is getting some mixed reaction from other county leaders.
Missoula County Commissioner Dave Strohmeyer is the leading advocate to return passenger rail connections from Billings to Bozeman, then replacing the old Butte stop with a new connection to Helena, and then west through Missoula to Seattle, and perhaps even linking to Denver. A few weeks ago, his fellow Missoula County commissioners expressed support to explore the idea of forming a rail authority.
Then he floated the idea at the Montana Association of Counties meetings in Great Falls last week. He now admits not everyone is jumping on board.
It's a mixed bag for some folks. This was the first time they'd heard of the idea of maybe it's possible to yet again have passenger rail service come through southern Montana. So the idea of establishing a rail authority was a little bit new, and I think they're just going to have to mull that over a little bit. For others, they're on board with the idea and now have to go back to their own county commissions and float the idea with their colleagues.
And Strohmeyer says Missoula County will host a rail conference in April, which he hopes will spur the discussion even further.
All right, let's turn to Chief Forecaster Bob McGuire. And Bob, there hasn't been a ton of snow here in Billings, really, but how are we in terms of snowpack?
Well, you know, in Billings, we average about 60 inches of snow a year. So far, we're like at 14, so we're not doing very well. But look at the mountains. Oh, my goodness, it's been snowing out there. And take a look at this. These are our Montana snow water equivalent figures. And basically, look at all of this. Everybody's at least 100% or higher of average at this time of year. So this is incredible. The lowest one we have is 104% of average. That's over in the Madison drainage area. Upper Yellowstone Valley is 117% of average. So that means we've got all the snowpack we need for a very good spring runoff, but not so much that we're going to see flooding up because of it. So this is really good. We're really in a very perfect spot for snowpack. Up in the mountains, that's where it's all snowing, and not down here in the plains. It doesn't get any better than this. We'll have, and speaking of that, your forecast looks pretty good for the week ahead, too. We'll chat about that in a few more minutes.
All right, thanks so much, Bob. Well, a Billings tradition continued today with the Mate Show. Q2's David J. has more from what's touted as the region's largest farm and ranch trade show.
We're here in the Expo Center at the 44th Annual Montana Agri Trade Exposition. And there's something special about coming and actually seeing the equipment here in person rather than in a picture online.
Digital versus real life, it makes a big difference. They can come here and get their options and then go home maybe a more educated consumer. Sold out show this year. We actually had a vendor on Monday call us from Florida and say that if a booth opened up, she could still get here in time. Our vendors, we draw from all over the country, the Dakotas, Idaho, Wyoming, Canada, but the visitors to the Mate continue to grow every year. They come from all across the region. The camaraderie, the networking. Thursdays at the Mate are interesting because we see a lot of our serious production ag people come to town and have the opportunity to not only meet with their vendors and their dealers, their representatives that they're used to working with, but network with other farmers from around the area that they don't get to see on a regular basis. You see the food vendor area just packed with people sitting around and having the opportunity to socialize. A lot of guys are just starting their calving. Our farmers have a quiet time, and as long as they're not fighting big snow drifts or bad weather at home, it's a great time for them to come to town.
The Mate Show runs 3 days. This is the first day, and it goes Friday and Saturday as well here in the Expo Center. And over at the Montana Pavilion, they have the Home and Health Expo. That's the latest from here. Jeanelle and Russ will send it back to you.
All right, thanks, David.
Now, the Mate Show runs from 10 to 6 tomorrow and from 10 to 5 on Saturday.
A 4-hour push to get local college students hired played out today in Billings. Montana State University Billings and Rocky Mountain College partnered to bring the 2020 Internship and Career Fair. Students from both schools took part. Some 40 organizations turned out to present their companies, ranging from government agencies to nonprofits. Students could ask questions, and a few on-site interviews even took place.
And I think that events like this are so crucial for that, and to explore what is out there and to see, is an internship right for me? And what employers are there? For example, maybe you have a business degree and it's a school district or someone who's looking for a business degree. And so I think it's also knowing that degrees lead to so many different options, and with the employers, just by having this opportunity to visit with them to see what opportunities that they have available to them.
And for those unable to physically attend the fair, you can find the employer directory on MSUB's website.
Well, the reigning Country Music Awards Male Vocalist of the Year, Luke Combs, is heading to the Magic City.
Just announced today, Combs is bringing his What You See Is What You Get tour to Billings and First Interstate Arena on Tuesday, October 20th at 7 p.m.
Tickets range from $25 to $85 and go on sale Friday, February 28th at 10 a.m.
Well, still to come on the 10 o'clock news, Montana's vaping ban set to end tomorrow gets new life. We're going to tell you why and for how long.
And later in sports, highlights from our First District semifinals. See who punched their ticket to divisionals. Coming up.
You're watching MTN News with Jeanelle Slade and Russ Riesinger. Storm Tracker weather with Bob McGuire. And sports with Scott Breen. This is the 10 o'clock news on Q2, Montana's news leader.